Okay, so you know how business setbacks can sometimes feel like getting hit in the stomach? Well, what if we could turn those punches into light bulb moments, like those aha moments where everything clicks? That's what we're diving into today.
Sounds intriguing.
We found this super insightful podcast episode called Bouncing Back, Proven Strategies for Overcoming Business Failures. And it's packed with strategies for turning setbacks into successes. It's kind of like having a roadmap for resilience, Helps you navigate those rough patches and come out stronger on the other side.
I like that, a resilience roadmap.
Right. And it reminds me of that feeling of getting a bad haircut, like awful in the moment, but it always goes back, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, businesses, they can bounce back too. And this deep dive is all about figuring out how.
And I think this episode really hits the nail on the head because it jumps right into something most people try to avoid talking about. Failure.
Right. It's like everyone wants to pretend it never happens.
It's much easier to sweep it under the rug and just move on.
But the source makes a really interesting point about how crucial it is to actually acknowledge failure. They use this great analogy. It's like baking a cake without a recipe.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right.
It perfectly shows why trying to fix a problem without understanding the root cause is, well, it's a recipe for disaster, pun intended.
Exactly.
You can't just toss ingredients together and hope for the best.
Yep.
To really improve, you got to understand those root causes. Like, why did things go wrong in the first place? Were there any warning signs that you might have missed along the way? What choices contributed to the problem? Once you really understand that, you can learn from it and prevent making the same mistakes twice.
Totally. And I think the source provides some really valuable insights on how to do that analysis. It's about digging deeper than the surface and dissecting the situation.
Yeah.
What are some questions entrepreneurs should ask themselves when trying to get to the bottom of a setback?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think one of the most important things is to be brutally honest with yourself. It's super easy to just point fingers at external factors or other people, but real growth comes from taking ownership of your role.
Hmm.
So some questions to ask yourself might be, what assumptions did I make that turned out to be wrong? Or did I maybe ignore some red flags? Did I have the right team? Did I have enough resources? And crucially, what could I have done differently?
That's such valuable advice. It's all about transforming that, this is a mess feeling into a constructive learning experience.
Exactly.
And this leads perfectly into the next big idea from the source, embracing a growth mindset. I think we've all heard of the growth mindset.
Yeah, for sure.
But I love how this source breaks it down and makes it super practical.
Yes, it's more than just a buzzword, that's for sure. It's about shifting how you view challenges. Instead of seeing failure as a personal defeat, it's about seeing it as an opportunity to learn and grow. And they share this story. It's about a project that totally flopped and the entrepreneur felt like it was the end of the world.
Yeah.
But instead of giving up, they stepped back, analyzed what went wrong, and used those lessons to, fuel their next venture. That's the power of a growth mindset in action.
And it's not just about staying positive,
Mm.
right? It's about actively searching out feedback, being open to different perspectives, and challenging yourself to always improve.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that failure, it's a natural part of learning, and it's through those experiences that we get the most valuable insights. And the source also talks about the importance of your circle, the people you surround yourself with, friends, mentors, maybe even a pet or two. Having a good support network can make a world of difference when you're facing tough times.
For sure. It's like having your own personal cheer squad, reminding you that you can do this and helping you see those setbacks as, well, opportunities for growth.
It's all about perspective.
Exactly. And speaking of opportunities, let's move on to the next step outlined in the source. It's about revising your business plan.
This doesn't mean you have to scrap everything and start over.
No.
It's about taking a step back, pausing and making strategic changes based on what you've learned from your setback.
Right. It's like tuning a guitar. You don't need a whole new guitar, just some adjustments to make it sound amazing.
I love that. And the source specifically talks about 3 areas to focus on when you're revising your plan: current market trends, customer feedback, and your financial outlook. Let's start with market trends.
Okay. Market trends. Well, things change so fast these days. How can entrepreneurs stay ahead of the curve?
It's about being proactive. It's about learning. Are there any new technologies that could, shake things up in your industry? Are customer preferences changing? Are there new competitors you need to keep an eye on? By staying informed, you can anticipate challenges and adjust your strategy accordingly.
Makes sense. What about customer feedback? How can entrepreneurs effectively gather and use that to fine-tune their plans?
This is where listening is key. Are your customers happy? Are there things you could do better? Sometimes setbacks can be a good thing, like wake-up calls. They highlight those areas where you need to make changes.
That's a great point. Sometimes those setbacks can be blessings in disguise, showing us things we might have missed before. And finally, the financial outlook. This can feel kind of daunting, especially after a setback.
Absolutely. It's so important to be realistic about where you stand financially. Do you need to tweak your prices, cut costs, explore new ways to bring in revenue? Having a clear picture of your financials will help you make those smart decisions about the future of your business.
It's like taking inventory, right?
Exactly.
Got to know what you're working with before you can make a plan to move forward.
Exactly. And once you've looked at those three key areas, market trends, customer feedback, your financial outlook, you can start making those changes to your business plan. Remember, it's not set in stone. It should grow and change as your business does and as you learn from both the good and the bad experiences.
I love that. It's not about being rigid. It's about being flexible and rolling with the punches in this ever-changing business world. And this brings us to another crucial piece highlighted in the source: building a strong support network.
This is so important for any entrepreneur, especially during those challenging times.
Yeah, it's true.
Think about climbing a mountain. You wouldn't try that alone, right?
No way.
You need a team for support to cheer you on and help you navigate the tricky parts. Running a business can be lonely. It can be really challenging. Having people who understand what you're going through makes a huge difference.
That's so true. They actually use that analogy in the episode about climbing a mountain. Having a network of people who get it can make all the difference.
Absolutely. It's about finding those people who can offer advice, encouragement, a fresh perspective when you need it most. And it's not just about asking for help when things are tough. It's about celebrating wins together, brainstorming ideas, learning from each other's experiences.
And as the source points out, building a network doesn't have to be all formal and serious. It can be as simple as connecting with other entrepreneurs online, or going to industry events, or even just grabbing coffee with a friend who understands the entrepreneurial journey.
Exactly. The important thing is to make those connections, build relationships, and surround yourself with inspiring people, people who challenge you, who support you along the way. It's like creating a buffet of ideas and connections.
I love that.
And you know what? Networking doesn't have to be awkward. Just think of it like a buffet. You get to try different perspectives, connect with people who share your interests, and walk away feeling energized, ready to take on the world.
I love that analogy.
Networking buffet. You know what really struck me from that podcast?
Like that.
How they emphasized that bouncing back isn't just about like picking yourself up and dusting yourself off.
Yeah.
It's about going deeper, understanding what went wrong, and using those lessons to actually propel yourself forward.
You're so right. It's not about pretending the setback never happened, but using it as fuel for growth. I loved how they talked about charting a new course for the future, turning those experiences into something positive.
It makes you think, right? What is it about some entrepreneurs that allows them to not just bounce back, but turn those setbacks into advantages?
Almost so they come back even stronger, you know?
Exactly. And the podcast hinted at a few things, but the one that really resonated with me was resilience.
Resilience, you mean like being able to adapt and keep going even when things get tough?
Exactly. It's about that mental toughness, emotional toughness, being able to weather the storms, learning from those challenges, and coming out stronger. Imagine a tree bending in the wind.
Okay, yeah.
It might sway, it might creak, but it doesn't break. That's resilience.
I love that visual. So how can entrepreneurs cultivate that? Is it something you're born with, or can you develop it?
Well, the podcast had several strategies, but one that stood out to me was the power of perspective. Choosing to focus on the lessons and the opportunities that come from setbacks, rather than just dwelling on the negative.
That makes me think of the growth mindset we talked about. Seeing challenges as stepping stones, not rope walls.
Absolutely. They go hand in hand. And this also ties into self-awareness. Knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, recognizing your emotional triggers, and developing good ways to deal with stress.
So it's about more than just having a positive outlook.
Yeah,
It's about having the self-awareness to handle all the ups and downs that come with being an entrepreneur.
exactly. It's like having a toolkit of strategies that you can pull from when things get tough.
Okay, yeah.
And another powerful tool in that toolkit, a strong support network. Those are the people you can turn to for encouragement, advice, and just a fresh perspective.
Like having your own personal board of advisors in your corner. The podcast also emphasized finding mentors who've been there and done that.
Yes, people who can offer guidance based on what they've been through. So to sum it up, Resilience is a mix of mindset, self-awareness, and surrounding yourself with a good support system.
Like building a fortress of resilience. Strong walls to protect you from those setbacks and a solid base to keep you grounded.
I love that analogy. And if we connect this back to overcoming those business setbacks, resilience is what lets entrepreneurs not just survive, but use those challenges as springboards for growth and innovation.
So it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving. Right.
Exactly. And that brings us to another interesting theme from the podcast, the power of innovation.
Oh, yeah.
It's fascinating how they talk about failure as a potential catalyst for innovation.
So it's like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
Right. When a product doesn't work out the way you planned, it forces you to re-examine your assumptions, explore those new possibilities, and get creative with solutions. Setbacks can be powerful drivers of innovation.
Instead of looking at setbacks like dead ends, we should see them as chances to rethink, reimagine, and create something even better. How can entrepreneurs actively harness that power of innovation?
The podcast had a few key strategies. One that I really liked was fostering a culture of experimentation within your business. This means creating an environment where it's okay to take risks, try new things, and even fail sometimes.
As long as you learn something from it, right?
Exactly. Fail fast, learn fast. And it's about encouraging that growth mindset, not just for you, but for the whole organization.
It's like creating a space where everyone feels safe to share ideas, challenge the status quo, push boundaries, even if it means messing up sometimes.
Exactly. Turning those oops moments into aha moments. And this also connects with something else that's so important, putting the customer first.
Customer centricity?
You got it. The podcast emphasized listening to your customers, understanding their needs, and making their feedback a part of your innovation process. Because ultimately, it's the customers who decide whether a product or service is successful.
That loops back to those strong customer relationships we talked about earlier.
It all connects. By having open communication with your customers and really seeking their input, you're not only building loyalty, but also tapping into a goldmine of innovation.
So to recap, we've covered acknowledging failures, embracing a growth mindset, revising your plan, building your support network, and nurturing those strong customer relationships. We also talked about the importance of resilience and harnessing the power of innovation.
What's so cool is how all these elements are interconnected. They work together to create this framework that's not just about bouncing back, but about using those tough times to grow and transform as an entrepreneur.
It's like taking those stumbling blocks and turning them into stepping stones toward a brighter, more innovative future.
Exactly. And speaking of the future, the podcast also touched on a crucial aspect of bouncing back that's often overlooked: strategic planning.
So it's not just about reacting to setbacks, but about proactively planning for challenges and opportunities.
Exactly. The podcast talked about having a clear vision for your business, setting realistic goals, and making a roadmap for achieving them.
Like having a GPS for your business journey.
That's a great way to put it. It helps you stay on track even when those unexpected detours pop up.
Yeah, because there are always going to be detours, right?
Always. And you know what? This connects to risk management.
Risk management. So like identifying potential risks and figuring out ways to minimize them.
Yes. Being proactive, not reactive. Thinking ahead about potential challenges and having backup plans in place.
Hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
Exactly. They emphasize that you can't eliminate all risks. It's impossible. It's about understanding the potential downsides and taking calculated steps to, soften the blow if things go wrong.
Being smart and strategic instead of letting fear stop you.
Absolutely. And you know what else is great about strategic planning? It empowers you to make good decisions.
Okay.
So instead of just reacting emotionally to setbacks, you can step back, look at the situation, and make choices that line up with your business goals.
It's like having a compass pointing you toward the best outcome, even when things are uncertain.
I love that analogy. And if we connect this back to bouncing back, strategic planning is what helps entrepreneurs to recover, but also pivot, adapt, and come back stronger.
So not just surviving those setbacks, but using them to grow and transform.
That's it. And this leads us to another fascinating aspect of strategic planning: adaptability.
Adaptability. You mean being able to adjust your plans as things change.
You got it. The podcast talked about how the business world is always changing, right?
Yeah.
What worked yesterday might not work today. So to really thrive, entrepreneurs need to be adaptable and embrace those changes.
It's like surfing. You need to constantly adjust to stay on top of those unpredictable waves.
Exactly. And a big part of being adaptable is that willingness to continuously learn, to evolve.
So being open to new ideas, always looking for ways to improve your skills and strategies.
That's it. It's that lifelong learner mindset.
Hmm.
Knowing that entrepreneurship is about continuous growth. It's about seeing setbacks not as failures, but as valuable lessons that shape your success.
It's a journey, right?
Exactly. And when we connect this back to strategic planning, adaptability is the key ingredient that allows entrepreneurs to not just bounce back from setbacks, but thrive.
So it's not about just having a plan, but a plan that can change and adapt as things around you change.
You got it. And that brings us to another critical piece, execution.
Execution, like actually putting those plans into action.
Precisely. A plan is only as good as its execution. You can have the best strategy, but if you don't actually do anything, it's all just talk.
It's like having a recipe for an amazing cake, but never actually baking it. You'll never get to enjoy it.
Exactly. And the podcast highlighted a few things that are super important for good execution: focus, discipline, and accountability.
So staying focused, committed to your goals, and holding yourself accountable for progress.
That's it. It's also about having systems and processes that support that execution.
And I imagine your team plays a big role here too. Having people who share your vision and can help bring those plans to life.
Absolutely. The podcast talked about building a team with a variety of skills and perspectives, individuals who complement each other and work well together.
A team that's greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. And when we connect this back to strategic planning, execution is what transforms those ideas into real results. It's bridging the gap between vision and action, making those dreams happen.
And speaking of results, the podcast also talked about something that's easy to forget: celebrating wins.
Yes. It's so easy to get bogged down in the challenges, but taking the time to acknowledge those positive steps is so important.
Like giving yourself a high five for every hurdle you overcome, every milestone you reach, no matter how big or small.
It's not just about feeling good. It's about reinforcing positive behaviors, boosting morale, and building a culture of success.
So it's about recognizing and rewarding the efforts that contribute to success.
Exactly. And when we think about bouncing back, celebrating wins helps you keep going, stay motivated, and build resilience.
It reminds you that entrepreneurship is a marathon, not a sprint. Celebrating those milestones along the way can help you stay energized and focused on the bigger picture.
Speaking of long-term vision, the podcast also touched on another often overlooked part of bouncing back: a strong sense of purpose.
You mean knowing why you're doing what you're doing.
Exactly. Having that clear understanding of your why can be really motivating, especially when things get tough. It's easy to lose sight of the big picture when you hit those setbacks, but when you know your why, it helps you stay focused and resilient.
It's like having a North Star to guide you through those rough seas.
I love that. The podcast talked about how a strong sense of purpose fuels your passion, sparks your creativity, and even helps you attract the right people to your team.
It's not just about what you do, but why you do it.
Right.
It's that motivation that keeps you going when things get tough.
Exactly. And if we think about bouncing back, a strong sense of purpose can be that anchor that keeps you steady during challenging times. It reminds you of the impact you want to make.
So you're seeing those setbacks not as defeats, but as chances to refine your approach, become even more determined, and make an even bigger contribution to the world.
Beautifully said. And speaking of making a contribution, the podcast talked about one last thing that I found really inspiring: giving back to others.
You mean using your experiences, the good and the bad, to help others who might be going through something similar?
Exactly. They talked about how sharing your story, offering advice, and supporting other entrepreneurs can be really rewarding. It's like turning your setbacks into something positive, using those lessons to empower others and create a more supportive environment for entrepreneurs.
It's like paying it forward,
Yes.
using your journey with all its ups and downs to help others navigate those same paths and avoid some of those pitfalls.
Exactly. The podcast mentioned how giving back creates a sense of community, gives you a renewed sense of purpose, and inspires others to overcome their own challenges.
So it's not just about you succeeding, it's about using that success to make a positive impact on the world.
Absolutely. And if we think about bouncing back, giving back can be the final step in that transformation.
Taking those hard-won lessons and using them to empower others, creating a more supportive community, and making a real difference in the world.
That's it. And with that, we've come to the end of our deep dive into this amazing podcast episode on bouncing back from setbacks.
Wow, that was a lot. From acknowledging those failures and embracing a growth mindset to resilience, innovation, strategic planning, celebrating wins, having a strong sense of purpose, and giving back, that was quite a journey.
It really is amazing how it all comes together, you know? Creating this framework that's not just about bouncing back, but using those experiences to grow and evolve as an entrepreneur.
It's like that line for the podcast. Bouncing back from failures isn't just about getting back up. It's about digging deep, learning from the past, and charting a new course for the future.
And what's so important is that it's not a solo mission. Surround yourself with the right people, building that culture of innovation, embracing that growth mindset, not just for you, but for your entire team.
It's like creating this whole resilient ecosystem
Right.
where everyone feels empowered to learn and grow and contribute to that shared success.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yep.
As we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave you with something to think about. What's one area in your business where you could really benefit from using one of these strategies?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Maybe it's really committing to that growth mindset, or revisiting your business plan, or even just finding ways to strengthen those customer relationships.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, take a moment to think about where you can turn potential setbacks into opportunities for growth.
I'm so excited for everyone listening to take these ideas and make them their own. Remember, setbacks, they're going to happen. They're a part of the journey. But they don't have to define your success.
Not at all.
By embracing these principles, you can turn those challenges into fuel for innovation, resilience, and a truly rewarding entrepreneurial journey.
And don't forget, entrepreneurship, it's a marathon, not a sprint. There will be ups and downs along the way. But by focusing on resilience, on innovation, on that constant learning, you can navigate those challenges and come out stronger on the other side.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of bouncing back from setbacks. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Until next time, keep that entrepreneurial spirit alive. And remember, even when things get tough, the potential for growth is always there.